Well, Jacksonville is the 15th most dangerous metro area for pedestrians, a statistic that's underscored by a seemingly endless cycle of tragic news stories. Joining us to discuss why Jacksonville remains such a challenging place to walk or bike safely is Matt Fall, City of Jacksonville's bicycle and pedestrian coordinator. Good morning, Matt.
Morning. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks for being here. Lauren Rushing, mobility planner and project manager at NueUrban Concepts. Good morning, Lauren.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And Fred Jones, director of planning and design collaborative at Haskell. Welcome back, Fred.
Good morning, Anne.
It's a very restrained
Mhm.
good morning, Fred. Thank you all for being here. Today is a day of world remembrance for road traffic victims. And Lauren, this is Jacksonville's first day of local remembrance for road traffic victims. I guess is tomorrow. Why was it important to have a local commemoration?
The World Day of Remembrance will be hosted by the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. This is a global day to remember those who have been killed in traffic crashes or have sustained life changing injuries from traffic crashes across the world. First and foremost, this is a day where we want to acknowledge the suffering of those that have been impacted by these tragedies. And we also want to give a platform for friends and families to express their grief. This is a big issue that we deal with on a national scale. We have about 40,000 people a year who die on our roadways. And locally here in Jacksonville, between 2021 and 2023, we actually had 508 people that were lost on our roadways here in Jacksonville. So we want to provide a place for those people to express that grief over their loss.
And so, what does that remembrance look like? Like, what is the event? How is that shaped?
So the event will be on November 15th, this Friday at noon in James Weldon Johnson Park in downtown Jacksonville. And we'll have safety advocates, transportation professionals, friends and families of victims, as well as interested residents who will all be there to listen to various speakers. We'll have the Mayor Donna Deegan will be there to speak, as well as various city elected officials and city leaders to talk about how this is an issue that needs to be addressed and deserves our attention, and to talk about the local initiatives that are going on to address this issue.
And do you expect some people, families of victims, to be sharing their stories?
Yes, exactly. So we will have two people. One is Drew Haramis. She's the founder of Angels for Allison. Drew sadly lost her 15-year-old daughter in a car crash on the Buckman Bridge many years ago. And then we also have Teresa Rose. She's the founder of the West Augustine Wheelers. She now lives in St. Augustine. She lost her friend in a cycling accident recently.
Matt, Jacksonville has a pretty poor ranking when it comes to cycling and pedestrian fatalities. It's a little bit better than perhaps it used to be, but it's still pretty awful. Um, what is that like? Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of factors that go into that. And like you said, we look at the Dangerous by Design report that comes out each year. And previously, we were ranked number six most dangerous metropolitan area in metropolitan areas with 500,000 residents or more. And went to ranking of number 15, like you said, which is getting slightly better. We were one of two out of the top 20 that got better and not worse. So that's good. But, we didn't take time to celebrate. We know that there's so much work to be done. There's just a million factors. One of the biggest factors is just infrastructure in general, which can take millions and millions of dollars of investment and planning and all of that. So that's more of a long range trying to get safer infrastructure. But there's things that we can do that are mid range and short range. Like short range is educational outreach, going out to schools in the Duval County Public Schools and teaching kids, hey, this is what you do at intersections. This is how you ride your bike safely. There's mid range things that we can do. Like we just got a $1.27 million US DOT grant that we can do some quick build demonstration projects with. And this is where you go out and you do a temporary installment that's going to be in the roadway for maybe 8 months to 2 years. And residents can see that and say, oh, this is what a protected intersection is.
Well, describe what that might look like.
So this could be anything as small as taking $20,000 and going and just putting in flex posts and painted bulb outs at an intersection to reduce the conflict area with pedestrians and vehicles. And it's a temporary installment. It could all just be washed away the next day if you need to, but it usually will stay there for about 8 months. And kids can cross more safely and say, oh, well, cars are channeled sort of around us instead of going right at us where it tends to be at an intersection, they'll slip lane right into the pedestrians. Now there's channeling, so the cars have to actually go around at a 90-degree angle and cross. So it's a temporary installment that can make roadway areas more safe just temporarily. And then communities get to test that out before investing in permanent infrastructure so they can see what like I said, a protected intersection or a temporary protected bike lane that has curbing between the vehicle lanes and the bike lane. So there's no back and forth there. And they can test it out and say, oh, this is something good. Let's make it permanent. So now let's go in with more infrastructure dollars and actually make this a permanent installment. So
And what is it about the design of it that it makes it temporary? I mean, those flex posts just aren't durable in the long term?
yeah, I mean, these are things that could just be drilled into the asphalt, but you could just pull them out and it could be some striping that you can just blast off after if they don't like this design. And so this is sort of a follow-up to the Vision Zero action plan that we're working on. It was through the action plan, we identify areas where maybe these temporary demonstration projects can be installed. And then we went for a second grant and got that $1.27 million. So we can go out next year and start showing people what these things look like and go into communities and saying, here's a demonstration project to let you test it out.
But Fred, you testified before the House Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee on Highways and Transit in 2019,
hmm
and you noted that Florida is home to, I think you said, the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 9 most dangerous cities. What is the deal with Florida that we have so many cities that are dangerous?
Yeah, a lot of this has to do with how Florida in general developed after, largely after World War II. Most of the infrastructure that was planned was built around the highways. So this is at a time when we're booming. The interstate system is developing and being deployed, and so most of the thinking around transportation, particularly in the Deep South and the Sun Belt, was driven around the automobile. And so, how much capacity? How can we move people faster, bigger, wider? That was really the thinking. And this was part of this economic expansion that we were experiencing at the time and tremendous suburban growth. And so the thought around, pedestrians and cyclists and traditional city building was sort of gone. It's one of those things that sort of fell on the wayside. And so you end up having this situation where, cars moving and people mixing don't do too well. So, and this has been particularly important for me. I've been talking about this for the last decade, especially even as an elected official when I was the vice mayor of Neptune Beach. Just really trying to advocate to really think a little bit differently about this. And to Matt's point, even though we've improved, it's always the same metropolitan areas that are in this list. They just sort of jockey for position, which who's going to be worse than the
Yeah.
other, and that's subsequent issue.
I think of suburban development
Mhm.
in the post-war era, though, as having sidewalks typically, and it really seems like new developments have shifted away from that, even as there's greater awareness of the risks of mixing pedestrians and cyclists with automobiles. Um, I mean, you're a planner
Mhm.
uh, by training. What is behind that shift, even in current developments that are being built today?
Well, again, I think so much of it does come down to cost and a lot of the standards that we're applying to our roadway designs. It's just about, faster. How do we accommodate as many vehicles? How do we accommodate people? We need to have these large turning radii at our intersections. And so we've taken these sort of standards as dogma and we've applied them into our neighborhoods. And as a result, you have this conflict between what people want and how they can move around, and so people feel safe. Mostly people are using the vehicles to take their short trips that they might use for walking or biking, but instead they're driving because the infrastructure is sending a message to everybody that this is about driving.
If you're just joining us, we are talking about pedestrian and bicycle safety in Jacksonville on a National Day of Remembrance for victims of traffic fatalities. And you're welcome to join our conversation. You can reach us at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect, wjct.org, or reach out on social media. We have a call from John in Mandarin. Good morning, John. Go ahead.
Hi. I had a quick observation. I know, but in along Phillips Highway, there's miles and miles of Phillips Highway that have no sidewalk whatsoever. And I see people that are forced to walk in the grass along the side of the road. And another thing is, how come it never became standard for them to put a pedestrian or bicycle, even if it's hanging off the side of the bridge, for people to get across, say, the Buckman Bridge without
That's,
getting killed?
that's a very good question. Who wants to take that?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
So yeah, Phillips Highway is one. It's Jacksonville is just has a lot of state-owned routes where us as the city, we can't go to FDOT and say, go ahead and do this. We don't have the authority to do that. We can talk to them about recommended designs and things like that. But yeah, one
And,
of the
and
things,
Phillips Highway is a state-owned road. It's
yeah,
US 1,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's a state-owned road, so the city can't go in and do that. But we can talk to FDOT and try to partner with them and try to make something better. One of the things we've done is we've been looking lately. We're doing a study at first last mile connections to transit stops, and right now we're looking at an area 8 stops along Normandy Boulevard. And what we're saying is let's make sure that folks that are walking to these transit stops can get there that last mile. Exactly what the caller was just saying about if there's not sidewalks that are connecting to these stops. I mean, I think we've all seen what are called goat trails, which is like a path worn in the grass where people are walking to a transit stop, which might just be a sign posted on a little 5x5 pad of concrete, And so we want people to be able to actually get to those stops and safely and be able to walk and ride to those things. So what we're doing is we're looking at that first last mile connection to these transit stops, and if we can start to target those and get people to transit, it's going to start to support multimodalism. So
It reminds me of a few years ago. I know on Phillips Highway there was a bus stop there, and they installed a pad for people who were in wheelchairs. So there was a concrete pad adjacent to the bus stop, and literally no way to get to it other than just kind of wheel down, presumably in traffic.
exactly, and we're such a large city, so there's so many areas that need to fix in that sense. But we're trying to get to them all, and that's, like I said, that's something we'd have to work with FDOT to fix, and we're trying our best.
Lauren.
Yeah, and it's also worth note that the Jacksonville Transportation Authority is working on what they're calling the Creating Safe Spaces Plan, which is similar to the City of Jacksonville Vision Zero initiative. And they'll be looking at safety from the perspective of adjacent to transit and first and last mile solutions to transit. So we hope that those kinds of solutions are something that will come out of that plan as well.
I want to talk about Vision Zero, but first we've got a question from Mike on Facebook. He says, what about building walkway overpasses over our busiest roads, Beach Boulevard, for example? We know that Beach Boulevard is one of the really bad roads when it comes to pedestrian fatalities. So how
Well,
realistic is that?
it's been talked about a lot. We had the same every council meeting that I had in Neptune Beach. Somebody suggested building a walkover over A1A so they get to the beach for the similar issue that the caller's observing. They are very expensive to install, and the other issue is that most people don't do it. People will find the path of the shortest path between where they're trying to go. So folks aren't going to walk 3 or 4 blocks out of their way to go over an overpass to cross. In general, just to your point about goat trails. And so it is an extremely expensive piece of infrastructure. If you have a single point of origin and a single point of destination, like a parking lot going right to the beach or something, and there's nothing else around it, sometimes that's an effective, like you see down towards Volano Beach. But in an urban area, it's a very expensive piece of infrastructure. And if we can just get our streets right around, with improved sidewalks and lighting and reduce crossing distances, we don't have to do those types of facilities.
I mean, and we know that on Beach Boulevard, a problem is, people not going to a stoplight, even if there is a traffic
Mhm.
crossing, that they're kind of walking outside of that because those traffic crossings are few and far between. So to your point about, would they walk to an overpass? Um,
Well, oh, I'm sorry
Go
to
ahead,
cut you
Matt.
off. Like Fred said, they're very expensive, and if you default to the standard, okay, this is the most boring, lowest level pedestrian bridge that we can put in. Fred's right. It's not going to get used. So you need to incentivize by having, like, Miami has some really amazing. You can ride your bike up the ramp to get there and cross, and there's cool lights, and there's coverage so you can be safe from the rain. That type of stuff. It's we can't just default to these. I mean, if you look at some of the pedestrian bridges that go across Martin Luther King, I mean, they look like it's just a cage basically. At nighttime it's going to be dark, so people aren't going to start using these things. So it's getting a lot of investment to get those
Yeah.
across. Like Arlington Expressway, I think is a great candidate for that. There's lots of getting from the north in Arlington to the southern area is just like really difficult for
Yeah,
people. So,
and that roadway has, is largely limited access, so
hmm
that's part of the solution as well. But when you have a series of blocks and things of that nature, a more effective solution is to install more of these hawk signals or pedestrian hybrid beacons. We're
With the
starting to
hawk
see those.
signal?
Yeah, these are these signals that are exclusive overhead pedestrian signals. They have three lights on them. You may have seen them. I know most recently they did install three of them on A1A. And what this does is they're essentially blacklit. They get activated once a pedestrian wants to make a crossing, and these are often mid block, and it moves into a yellow phase and then a red phase. And it's sort of confusing. It's not really intuitive, but what it does is the drivers see this light and they're like, what is going on? And so what it does is has the effect of slowing everybody down. A lot of folks are like, should I wait? And you'll be getting a red flashing light, which signals that I should stop, even though it's clear, but that says that you should proceed through once the pedestrians have cleared the intersection. So these are just very low cost ways to enhance crossings for
We've got a
peds.
call from Scott on the west side. Good morning, Scott. Go ahead.
Hey, yes. This is Scott.
Hi, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, I was just wondering if there are any plans to put sidewalks on Collins Road between Roosevelt and Blanding. There are a lot of folks pedestrians who walk along the side there because we have some low-income housing off of Collins Road there, and they walk out to Blanding to get the bus. On the other side of Blanding, all the way out to Oakleaf has been widened, and there's sidewalks on both sides. But I was just wondering about our side.
Thanks, Scott. Matt, do you know the answer to that?
yeah, I know that there's a lot of great projects that are coming along. We're looking at Collins all the time, and Blanding, I believe, is the FDOT route again. So it's just making our local connection to that. But there's some things in the works, and we're definitely looking at that. Especially, I believe it's already been identified on our high injury network, a couple of routes around there. So yeah, there's things coming along.
Is FDOT being responsive in terms of, coming along on the roads that they own?
Yeah, I mean, they're making an effort, and I know that they have Target Zero, which is going to align with our Vision Zero. So I know that it's like Fred was saying, there's, everything's been designed so auto vehicle centric for so long that it takes a long time to sort of turn the ship in the right direction. But they're beginning to, consider bicyclists and pedestrians all multimodal level of service a little bit better.
Got a call from Richard on the west side. I'm kind of noticing a west side theme. Go ahead, Richard.
What a weird. Hello.
Good morning, Richard. Go ahead.
Yeah, and my comment and question is about certain stretches of roads like Blanding Boulevard, for example. There's stretches of that road for more than a mile with no crosswalks, no traffic signals, and in a very dangerous situation for pedestrians. Seems to me that putting in crosswalks would be helpful. And then, I mean, even looking at one of the more walkable neighborhoods in Jacksonville and in Riverside, you're going down Park Street anytime, you'll see people waiting there for long periods of time to cross the street. No crosswalks, no lights, no nothing. Can't something be done about that?
Good question, Richard. Are those, again, we talking about FDOT roads, landing, but what about Park?
Yeah, we're always looking at local routes. I think that's in Council District 7, and I know Jimmy Peluso is very proactive. He's very proactive about trying to make things safer for bicyclists and pedestrians, and so we're working with our traffic engineers to look at all these routes.
We have 840 square miles of roadway. A lot of it's FDOT, and it's a big undertaking. I mean, to the caller's point, it's happening everywhere where we have these issues, we have these deficiencies, and limited amounts of funding. And FDOT is trying to make a difference, but also if you look at their work program, it's so heavily focused on more capacity for larger, bigger, faster roads. There's a lot of interchange. There's limited access facilities is their big focus, and that's millions and billions of dollars. And then sometimes having to redirect that to this issue of bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure it's a challenge right now.
Lauren, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think prioritization is a big issue just because, as Fred mentioned, we have such a large city with so many roads. But I do want to mention that as part of developing the Vision Zero action plan, there will be plenty of community engagement opportunities. So, Matt, maybe you could let us know where folks could go to get their name on a newsletter so they can let us know, what areas should we prioritize? Where are you seeing issues? Because you all are just like us, the ones out there on the streets observing these things, and we really want to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. So we have part of our site is the bike ped site now has a Vision Zero tile that people can click on and see dates for the next public meeting and get the updates that way and email us with your recommendations. So that's jacksonville.gov/pedbike, PEDBIKE, and just click on the Vision Zero tile and you'll get the information there.
Lauren, explain what is Vision Zero. We haven't really given a good definition of that.
So Vision Zero is a movement and a totally different strategy towards road safety that says that no number of deaths on our roadways is acceptable, and it sets out a goal to eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries. Not all crashes. That's an important note because the strategy takes a systems approach and understands that we can only prevent these crashes through systematic change in how we're designing our roads, who our policies are prioritizing. And so we're not going to prevent all crashes because it acknowledges that humans do make mistakes, right? So perfecting driver behavior, travel behavior is not going to be the end all be all solution because humans make mistakes, but we have to make sure that when mistakes are made, they don't have to result in death. And we do that by changing who we're prioritizing on our roadways and how we're designing those roads.
And the goal is ambitious, right? 2035 is the deadline to set for no fatalities. Is that right?
So I don't know if the National Vision Zero Network has a specific date. Is that
They've
true,
been
Fred?
talking really about 2050
Okay.
is the big, goal. And again, a lot of this does come down to speed, but I think there's different sets of different horizons for folks, but I think nationally that's sort of the direction.
I want to take a call from Devin in Atlantic Beach. Go ahead, Devin.
Hello, this is Devin.
Go.
And I was driving down A1A like half hour before y'all even mentioned the hog lights. They're like, "Oh, a hog light." And I have seen a few different YouTube videos on the hog light implementation and how they've been ineffective. And y'all also mentioned how they've been not really intuitive. And amusing bit in some of the videos is that a cop even like blows just right through one, like not caring, even while a pedestrian is like almost is crossing. And I was wondering, do y'all have any plans to make the idea better or implement it differently?
Thanks, Devin. Just briefly, because I've got a couple calls I want to get to.
Well, again, I think a lot of education, sometimes these come out and they can be a little bit confusing. So I think the more that we have these and the more that people interact with them and interface, I think it'll become a little bit clearer how these things operate.
Daniela in Arlington, just briefly, go ahead, Daniela. Daniela, go ahead, just briefly.
Hey, I just wanted to say, what about planting trees along walkways and things? Because it can get really hot in the summertime, and it's almost unbearable.
Yeah, good comment.
Yeah, I can jump in on this. If coverage is a huge thing. I think when you do any survey, a public survey, and you ask people, why do you not bike or walk as much as you would like to? The number one answer is always the weather, and there's nothing we can really do about the weather, but we can begin to provide coverage, and it all actually ties in with Resilient Jacksonville, which is a great document that was published earlier this year. So we definitely look at coverage, and you want to make it not just safe, but also comfortable so people are safe and riding out there.
Got a call from Denise in Nassau County. Denise, go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, Denise.
Hi. Yeah, people say, for example, the comment about Blanding Boulevard and the long stretch with no crosswalks. And sometimes the issue is that a misplaced crosswalk can create a false sense of security for the pedestrian. They think, oh, I can cross here, I'm safe. And that can cause pedestrian accidents. So sometimes, that in itself is not a solution. It's educating both the pedestrian and the motorist. And also I notice sometimes at signalized intersections where there are crosswalks and the whole gamut, of the pedestrian signals and everything, pedestrians choose to cross maybe 20 feet from the intersection.
Yeah, true. Denise, thank you. That's really all the time we have. I just want to make sure that we mention this event. It's at James Weldon Johnson Park. It's tomorrow at noon.
That's correct.
All
Yes.
right. Matt Fall, Fred Jones, Lauren Rushing, thank you all so much for being here this morning.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
Thank you.
much, Ann.